So for people out there who are listening, who may not know, explain to me who you are and what your background is.
Well, I'm Albanian first off, and I'm involved with the Gambino family since I'm a kid, so literally since I'm a young kid. And I moved down here to Tampa, back and forth from New York to Tampa, Florida, to set up some businesses, which I did. I set up a parking company, I set up nightclubs, glass companies, and I based down here bookmaking, and we ran things back and forth from Florida down back to the East Coast.
Okay. What specifically did you do, like in your height of being involved in all of this and being involved with the Gambino family, and what are you specifically known for?
Well, I was known as an enforcer of the Gambino family.
Okay.
Specifically, I worked later on in the years for the Gotti family directly, and was their enforcer, their killer, the guy that you didn't want to see if they had a problem with us.
Okay. So obviously, if you're admitting you were a killer and you're sitting here right now, not behind bars, how did that happen?
I was in jail many years. Tampa, actually my case was based out of Tampa, Florida, although I was a New Yorker and born and raised in New York. Mm-hmm. We expanded business down here to Florida, and the Middle District of Florida ended up sending an indictment, RICO case against me. And I went on the run, which they say on the lam, to probably about 20 countries. And eventually I was caught in Brazil by Interpol and imprisoned in Brazil for 2.5 years fighting extradition back to this country, which eventually they got me back here, and I did the circuit of prisons in Tampa between Falkenberg, Hernandez County, Pinellas County, Hillsborough, Lake County. I've been in all these jails here, Miami, MCC. So I'm very familiar with the system in Florida, Miami, Tampa area.
Okay, and what exactly were you locked up for?
I was charged for drug dealing, murders, murder conspiracies, assaults, and just a slew of everything which they bottle up in what they call RICO. I was involved in a RICO racketeering case and with the Gambino family, and considered a street boss.
Holy shit. Okay, so how did you get out of prison if you had a murder charge? How did you beat a murder charge amongst all of these other insane charges?
Well, when I was down in Brazil, when Interpol catches me, I'm doing about 2 years, 2.5 years there. Well, I did exactly 2.5 years there, and I was brought back here on Christmas Eve 2006, almost 2007. Extradition law is a 30-year sentence between countries. So I'm facing life here. Once I left the country, in order for them to bring me back, the maximum time I can get on that extradition treaty is the maximum life sentence in Brazil, which is 30 years. So once they bring me back, it's a 30-year term. And
how old were you then?
About 25 on that. I was in my 40s, about 40, 41 years old when they grabbed me.
Okay. With a 30-year sentence.
Well, prior to that, I've been in and out of prisons basically my adult life. So I was in and out. I did a 3.5-year bid on a gun charge. I did some assault charges. I did 6 months, a year, 3 months violations, bribery cases. So I'm accustomed to the system.
Wow. And so it seems like you obviously got a lot of time knocked off that sentence, right? I mean, how did you get all that time knocked off?
Well, once I come back to Tampa, Florida, before I come back to Tampa, Florida, there's a couple of guys that were involved in me, associates of mine, that fly down to Brazil, and they give me paperwork on certain guys in the Gambino family, one of them being the son of John Gotti Sr., the boss of the Gambino family from the 80s to the 90s, who dies in prison. But his son was what they call Queen of the Day. So Queen of the Day is somebody that walks into the government, makes a deal with them to give up crime, criminal activity, and he's free to talk about anything, can't get charged with it. At the same time, giving up activities of associates, members of the Gambino family or of other organizations and other families. Mm-hmm. So that was, I guess, around 2005, 2004, 2005, thereabouts, while I was in those penitentiaries. Gotti's son, Gotti Jr., was Queen of the Day.
He was Queen of the Day, meaning that he talked to the FBI and got full protection from them?
Yes, good, okay. Exactly, cooperate. Most people don't know what that is, and then it translates into what they call a 302, I mean, you're never going to get all the documents of
Right.
what he was talking about, but the thing is, he met with the government and he started cooperating. Yeah.
How old were you when you started getting involved with these guys?
I was a kid. My father was involved with my uncle in a gambling business. My uncle ran a game called Three Card Monte in the Bronx with Charlie Luciano, was a very famous gangster's name, Lucky Luciano, the cousin of Charlie Luciano. Blackie was my uncle's partner. So I would be at those games at 5, 6 years old, and after that, Andy Ruggiano was the boss in my neighborhood. Andy Ruggiano was a quiet don in my neighborhood. He was the guy that ran our area for the Gambino family, very famous gangster. He was straightened out or became a made member of the Mafia through Albert Anastasia. Albert Anastasia was Murder Inc. He's also a very famous gangster, killer. I hung around that family and played baseball with them, boxed with them, went to the gym with them, and became very familiar with the ways of the Mafia being quiet and underground. And despite what people see later on in the Gotti era of the loud and the boisterous, it's not the way the gangsters operated for within the mob. It was a quiet organization. It was supposed to be there.
Right.
So guys like Andy Ruggiano was a true boss. People really don't know who it is because
Behind the scenes.
He was very quiet, behind the scenes guy.
So what chain of events led up to you actually meeting the Gottis, or Gotti Sr. was the first guy you worked with, right?
Well, again, I'm around the Ruggiano family, and I'm around and meeting different gangsters.
Did you know, like when you started and you were with those guys, did you know who the Gottis were? I mean,
nah, they didn't have that name back then.
Okay.
Gotti Sr. ends up getting straightened out in the late 70s. His brother Jeannie, a little before him, a couple years before him. I don't think they ever get that right in the media. Jeannie was actually a made member first.
Jeannie
Gotti.
Yeah. Okay.
And Senior Gotti ends up getting a name for himself in the early 80s, in the 70s through a murder, but in the early 80s where the public really knows him. And later on, Fat Andy Ruggiano goes to prison, so Senior steps in his shoes and becomes the boss in our area, which is a captain and skipper at that time.
Okay.
So as time progresses, I'm meeting different mobsters in the Gambino family, and Senior becomes one of the guys I meet, and Junior I meet through mutual friends. We're all in the same neighborhood, so it's not really somebody would say to you, it's like living in the Tampa area and you go to International Mall and that's where the scene is set and everybody sees each other on a daily basis. So it's, just a mixture of where we live in the area. And one of the authors, a writer, Lou Romano, talks about, your zip code, and your zip code determines the way of your life. And our zip code was, if you could spell our zip code, my area was 11421, but if you spelled it a different way, it would be Mobsters Incorporated. I mean, it was just gangsters around, and that's how we were raised.
And what specific area was that? Like, what specific town was that?
I grew up in Woodhaven, but the aligning neighborhoods, Ozone Park was also a gangster area, and Howard Beach is where the Gotti family lived.
Okay, I don't even know where Woodhaven is. Sorry,
there was a New York. It's New York. It's a Queens.
Queensboro. Queens, New York.
And it's in that area. It's different townships within Queens. Yeah.
Wow. So, what was the working relationship with you and Gotti when you guys first met? Like, what was the first interaction like, and how did that become a working relationship between you guys?
Well, I was known to be a scrappy kid prior to that, and I was always fighting.
You were a fighter?
Yeah, I was a fighter. I was always in the gyms, but I was a fighter in the street more so. I wasn't a big guy. I was a small guy. I was good with my hands, and most of the guys from my neighborhood were tough. I'm not the only guy that was fighting in our neighborhood. Everybody fights. Whether they're good fighters or not, they fight.
Okay.
And Jamaica Avenue, where I was from, was more of a poverty-stricken area, lower middle class, I guess, lower class, depending on where you live.
Jamaica Avenue?
Jamaica Avenue,
okay.
It's Queens.
Okay.
And where the Gottis lived, where Howard Beach was more of a money area. So some of those kids from that area would come up to Jamaica Avenue, where the Ruggiano family was from and where I was from. And they started nicknaming our area for the violence it was, and Death Haven instead of Woodhaven. And
wow.
So as time progresses, the kids are all meeting each other through sports, through activities, through different things. And Gotti's were one of the names and one of the families that were around the area or would come up to our area, and we started mixing with each other and continued in criminal enterprise. We were all on the streets, either selling drugs, moving money, bookmaking, hurting guys, and hustling. So
Wow.
that was our everyday life. I mean, this is what goes on in our areas.
Okay. So you guys kind of like, you guys rubbed shoulders. You guys knew a lot of the same people. And then how was he the one that approached you and said, hey, I want you to be my hitman? Or did he say, hey, I got a job for you? How did he introduce you into his life?
He was dealing drugs with another guy, Johnny Gabbett. They were moving pot and small stuff, not really small levels, but, nothing major truckloads, but, 100 pounds they were buying at a time, 200 pounds, something like that.
Yeah.
And that was his partner. And Gabbett also knew me and lived around the corner from me. So I first meet the son that way. The father I meet through some of his associates and older guys and through his son. And I start mixing with them. They're big heroin movers, and they asked me to get involved in the heroin trade. So I start slowly getting involved in heroin besides the pot business, marijuana, cocaine. And like any business, you expand. So you start in one drug, and we're expanding all over. And I'm moving drugs from a small level to a big level.
Okay.
And from there, I just step into the violence. It's just a slow process of...
So you started making quite a bit of money moving drugs?
Oh, yeah, we're all making money, big money.
Really?
Yeah, we come in from, I was probably at the time, I was talking about $1 million a month. And
holy shit.
And I think that's lowballing and being conservative. So the different guys that were around with us did interviews and said that number is not right, it's higher than that. Guys that actually were my friends and later on became my enemies, guys I shot, that spoke up and did interviews and said, I think John's underplaying the amount of money they were making and how violent he was. But, I mean, everybody's going to have an opinion of what was accurate, what wasn't. But the accurate number, I think, is safe to say about $1 million a month.
Holy crap. And how did you So what transitioned you from making money dope dealing to, like, were you actually, like, getting paid to execute people?
Well, it doesn't really work like that.
I don't know how it works, so I'm ignorant to it.
I'll walk you
okay,
through it.
I
I'll give you an example. I'm a drug dealer. You're a drug dealer. Somebody tells me you're moving drugs in the neighborhood. It's not that I'm sitting there peddling, quarter keys, grams on the corner. There's people that are working for us. And if they tell me about a guy like yourself, we'll approach you, find out what you're doing, and you're told to do business with us, for us. And I'll give you guys that run around the street. If you don't do business with them, you're going to jeopardize yourself, whether you're going to get hurt or killed, depending on what you do. And so in the middle of us doing business, everyday business, guys are getting killed, guys are getting shot, guys are getting hurt. To expand our business.
To expand the business is the main.
It's not always to expand. It's always to preserve it. Anybody that's challenging it. And it's not just the drug business. It's the same for the sports business, union business. So depending on what the issue is, whoever's in charge at the time, whether it's, Fat Andy Ruggiano, whether it's Gotti or whoever's calling the shots, they'll delegate work to guys like me and different guys to go out, and we'll either collect their money shooting guys, moving drugs, bookmaking, and hustling the streets. So we're controlling our streets under the flag of the Gambino family, and this is everyday life for us.